Welcome back to part 2 of Coming Alive in Midlife. And we are really talking about how do we lean into things like purpose, emotional regulation, and aliveness in this season of life to really lead life well. We want to be intentional. We want to make our lives count. And so that's what we're talking about today. And last week, I had on my two coaching partners, Emily Love and Emily Jamieson. We are the Transformation Triad, and they both were on last week. But this week, we get the pleasure of having Emily Love on. I'm going to tell you a little bit more about her than I did last week. So she is a master coach. And when I say master, I mean master coach. She's absolutely incredible. She has 4 children. She and her husband, Grayling, live in Georgia. She was let me just say, she's in 2 Hall of Fames and for basketball. And she is an incredible standout individual who is the kind of person that changes your life. She's had a long career in sports and has transitioned that to be excellent in other arenas. And I think she's a great example of how your purpose doesn't change throughout your life, but what you do changes. And she talked about that last week a little bit of kind of this macro idea of your purpose is bigger than what you're doing at the moment, and you carry it with you your whole life long. So Emily, welcome back.
Thank you for having me. And I have to say, I just need to take a moment and say thank you so much for having me and a part of the purpose that you and Alex have built on this podcast. I know I'm not alone when I say that the wealth of knowledge that I gain from listening to, interview after interview, you have done a phenomenal job of creating deep and wide purpose for listeners that can listen and just really be better because of what you guys have decided to sacrifice for. So I just say thank you and just thanks for having me back.
Okay, well, let's just dive right back in, Emily. We ended talking about emotions last week, and I want to talk a little bit more and pick up where we left off. And then we're going to move into aliveness. But can you just talk a little bit about what are some practical practices that women can access to regulate their emotions?
Yeah, that's such a great question. I love that question and thinking about really how can we all how can the actions we take build into the idea of us growing our emotional world? Because what we know about life is that really everything takes intention. And I know that can feel overwhelming, but I want you to think about that in the best way. That instead of seeing our emotions as enemies or things we need to tame, I love to think about the idea that emotions are like wildflowers in this garden that you're actually tending to on purpose. And so I absolutely love this question, Krista, about what can we do to increase the beauty and the depth and the wonder of our garden? And I like to talk from the very beginning of things, just simply like breath work. When we can get a better hold on our physical body, last week we talked about how emotions are first sensations in our body. And so if as women and men who are listening actually here today, if we can get a better grasp on our physical bodies, then we will already be ahead of sort of this emotional regulation game. So what do I mean by that? I mean that we have some mind-body awareness, that we slow down enough to actually scan our body and think about where am I holding tension? And when I get frustrated, where does that anger land? And when I start to feel something, how am I interpreting that? And so I think another way that we can do this and build some of this like physical awareness is actually to move our body. So if I am not spending time building muscles and moving my body and feeling out of breath, then it's actually really hard to build that mind-body connection. And so I would actually say increasing physical health, however you want to do that, is actually really key in this conversation. I love timeouts. And we've talked about that a lot extensively last session, but if we cannot carve out time to be our own best friend, quiet time where we're not rushed, time where we get a journal out, or, the Triad wrote the Mindset Revolution, and we all have a practice of opening that up throughout the course of a day. And that helps us understand ourselves and our emotions. So carve out quiet time to be your own best friend and care about how you're feeling. I think that's so key. I talked about movement as it relates to having a stronger mind body connection. But I would also say that movement is the cheapest, fastest, and most effective way to change your emotions and your mind. And so if you find that you get stuck feeling frustrated, or if you're looping in your own mind, or if honestly you're just really sad and you can't shake it, go on a walk. It is such a beautiful and cheap resource that God gave us. And when we move our mind, when we move our body, we change our mind. And with that, our emotional landscape. So I use this every single day. I can get worked up. You talked about my, basketball career, and I would call myself a high performer. Excellence matters a lot to me, but with it, the pressure to perform. And I put that on myself. So moving my body helps me manage the pressure that I actually like in my life. But sometimes I need to shift. And so I do that. And then, last thing I would say, Kristen, and then I want to hear from you because you are one of the queens of giving me resources for this. But I really love the idea of being very careful about how we talk about our emotions. So instead of, I'm so stressed, I feel, I'm overwhelmed, or, I've got anxiety, that we would actually learn to start saying a part of me feels, because we're listening to ourselves all the time. And if I say a part of me feels, it doesn't mean the whole part of me is, and I can shift it with that awareness and regulation. So that might feel really minor, but it is not. Our words are everything. And so if we can get used to describing feelings as momentary experiences, and a part of me is feeling, then what we're doing really is creating this kind of subconscious awareness that there are other parts of me as well. And I can shift a part, wherever I please. And that seems to bring a lot of relief and a great sense of hope when I know that, I might be feeling, a part of me might be feeling anxious in this moment, but in the next moment, I can feel something entirely different. And I'm willing to cultivate that inside of myself. So
that's a good marriage tip too. Because if you think about like how much is, well, I feel this, well, I feel that. And then that person may interpret that as that's how you always are feeling about something. But if you just say a part of me feels like this in this moment, wow, that's a game changer in a conversation.
You're so right, because you know what you're doing is you're not living in the absolutes, and our marriages need that. That's a fantastic point. What do you do to shift your emotions?
I often will do a reset ritual. And a reset ritual is just a physical motion that, that's what we know about somatic movement, is that it stops your brain in a good way. It brings your brain out of that amygdala into the prefrontal cortex. And so my reset ritual is just to put my hand over my heart and I say, remember who you are. What that tells me, like I speak it to myself. So I usually stand up, I put it over my heart, and it says, go back into alignment of what you know to be true. Go back to your values. Go back to what God says is true about you. And that it really does work. I don't know how else to say it. Like it really does work. Some people breathe. Some people Tiger Woods, he actually would take 10 steps after his bad golf swing, and he would allow himself 10 steps to be frustrated. I don't know, whatever it is, have some reset ritual that I think they're just really helpful.
I love that. And I will never forget when the triad was working with a corporate client. One of the reset rituals that really stuck out to me, I'm so glad you said this, but this person, when they sort of needed to shake something off that they didn't like, they'd like dust their shoulder off, right? To get off that mistake or that failure. But then the next one that this individual said was when they do something that they're proud of, like, a little power booster on your hand, this person gives themselves a little power boost of, well done, I see you. And I will never forget that. And I'm so glad you brought that up. Like we can actually have fun with ourselves and be a little bit silly. And what a beautiful example. So I say, if you're listening to this, borrow these that you've heard or create your own and have fun with shifting your emotions towards the aim that you want. It's so good.
Can you talk a little bit more specifically about this idea of pausing and choosing? We all know what an emotional avalanche feels like. And then we're just all of a sudden at the bottom of this like barrel, just spinning round and round in unproductive thinking. How can we do it differently?
Wow. That's such a beautiful question. Pause and choose is one of the most empowering statements or mantras I think you could pick up for your life, because in that space, and Viktor Frankl really, I mean, if we really go back to it, he's the one I think that created this for all of us, for all of mankind. He survived the Holocaust. He wrote Man's Search for Meaning, one of my favorite books of all time. But he talks about in the space of pause and choose is where we find our freedom and our power. And so, yeah, I think, there's so many things working against us in the United States of America specifically. We do not pause. We just roll a million miles a minute. And with that, create massive consequences because we do not stop to think. And I think if we could just slow down time enough to really pause. You know what's so beautiful about this, Krista, is that when we pause, we can actually then do a little bit more work about, am I assuming the best or the worst about the person that I'm thinking about? Am I living in alignment with my highest self or my lowest self right here? If I could pause and just go, what in the world is wrong with you, Emily? And sometimes I talk to myself like that, but like not like in a funny way, like, what the heck is wrong with you? And I'm like, I don't even know. Okay, let's take a breath. Let's like bring some humor to it. Life isn't so. And then I just get to go, okay, wow, but if I do not give myself that ability to pause, you want to know what I do? I blow up my relationships. I make choices that I am not proud of. Or maybe it even is all internal. And I think this is the thing we don't talk about. I don't pause, I choose, and then I ruminate all day long. I live inside of my frustration, or I live inside of my, failure or my seemingly misstep. And then what has that caused me? It's caused me moment after moment after moment of distraction, and I'm not living in the present. And that is robbing me of the life, which is right below my own 2 feet. So whether it's, external implications or internal implications, man, I really think our most free life lives in our pause and our choose.
It's incredible. Will you talk about the research around 90 seconds?
Yeah. Oh, Krista, you've been around me long enough to know I love to talk about this. With Dr. Joan Rosenberg, she found that no emotion, which starts as a sensation, lasts longer than 90 seconds in our body. Let me say that one more time. No sensation in your body, which turns into emotion when we label it, will last longer than 90 seconds in your body. So if like a cloud passing through the sky, if we can get that visual, if we pause and breathe and we let that sensation live, it will not flow past 90 seconds. If I breathe and I see it and I welcome it, the sensation will fade and I'm free to move on in the next moment and choose. The way that 90 seconds gets recreated to another 90 is when I feed the emotion with a thought. So if I have an emotion of frustration, then I think, how dare she do that? Well, cue more 90 seconds. But if I can just be aware that it's flowing through my body, I'm going to let it go. And then I'm going to choose my thought in that next moment. It's time to move on. Emily, who do you want to be? How can you live inside of generosity? Boom. Now I'm creating a new 90 seconds of emotion. So it's true. It works. 90 seconds is your new timer. So we had a client recently actually in our triad workshop say, my mama used to tell me to count to 10. But now I know I'm counting to 90. And I love that as new learning, like set that timer and watch your life change. I thought that was a profound share.
Yeah. I just had a client who one of their action steps was to set an actual timer of 90 seconds, like so they can see it, like actually set the timer when they're feeling those strong emotions. And I thought that was so helpful. Like sometimes we need that. We need like, okay, I'm going to allow myself this for 90 seconds and then I'm going to switch my thinking around it.
Oh, so powerful. Wow. And courageous, right? Courageous and brave to live inside of that type of a choice. That inspires me.
As we continue talking about this idea of being wide awake, we want to be wide awake. We don't want to just be in this numb stupor in midlife where we feel down in the dumps. Life is over. Life is changing and sad. Nope. We're going to be wide awake instead. And so let's talk about aliveness, Emily. When we say aliveness and we talk about it in terms of energy, what does that mean?
Well, I'd actually like to use an example of somebody I know in my life that displays this maybe better than anyone that I know, and it's you. So Krista, if you know her at all, you know that she's walked through a really, really tough physical season. There's not been a moment of this season that you have complained. You have talked about your experience in lifetime, but you have never complained one single time. And when I tell you, y'all, in the depth of her physical suffering, when she would walk through a room, it was like, bang, I'm here, open the door. I'm here, I'm love. I mean, joy. And this woman doesn't walk anywhere around without lipstick. If I were to tell you what aliveness is, you'd look in the dictionary and Krista's face would be there. It is joy and enthusiasm that does not match your current reality of suffering. It is the ability to find joy even when it seems impossible. It is the way that you meet other people with a sense of wonder that they can't help but be changed in the aliveness that you hold. Don't look at me like that. You don't like that I'm talking about you, but it's true. And anyone that's listening would be like, yep, I know, Emily. We're so lucky that we get to experience Krista's aliveness. So I think one of the reasons I know that this, like, it's who you are is because aliveness is contagious. And anytime I walk away from you, I feel more alive in myself. And that is exactly what it is that we do. It's an energy that we carry that just gets on everybody else when we're in front of them. And they walk away inspired, invigorated, loved. And, and maybe it's even just like we're actually meeting someone in their sorrow, but they carry hope after they meet with us. And I am so thankful that I know what it looks like when I look at you.
Oh my gosh. Emily Love. Jeez. That is a humbling moment right there, because listeners, you can hear it in her. She is alive. And that is how I feel about you. So thank you from the bottom of my heart. Can you talk about the 8-foot radius?
Yeah, I think, I told you that I was an athlete, and I think the science of this is really incredible. If you think about an athlete and what a sports team does in moments that are really crucial, you get in a team huddle, right? And you put your arms around each other, your heads are almost touching, and you're asking for inspiration, encouragement, and strength from your team. Well, I understood why we did this. It's a communication moment. It's an alignment moment. But when I learned about the 8-foot radius, I figured out why it's so important and powerful. And the 8-foot radius, Krista, is that Heart Math Institute did this research, and they found that our heart has a radius outside of itself of 8 feet. So if you extend your arm, I'm tall, so it's about 4.5 feet, but we add even a little bit more to that, and we draw a circle around our body. That is how far our heart extends out of ourself. What does that mean? It means that the emotions that you carry, they do get on other people. They do interact with other people. So I tell people, anytime that I walk into a room, my heart radius is meeting yours, and we are co-creating something together because our heart radiuses sync. And then they create something in the way that we live in connection and community with one another. So when we think about this idea of aliveness, and honestly step it all the way back to emotional regulation, I want to ask you, what is the energy that you are putting into the world by way of your 8 feet? Are you bringing to the world doubt, hesitation, a lack of self-belief, or just straight up anger? Are you bringing hope and optimism and love and compassion to the world? All of us are going to carry and create something slightly different, and that's great. But we want to intentionally think about, how do we live on the high side of emotions? And Dr. Ron Hawkins, I've given you a lot of research here, but go and take your time to look it up if this fascinates you. Actually put an energy scale to emotions that have sort of an energy frequency. And it's no surprise that love is at the top, that fear and grief are at the bottom, but we can do it. Like I talked about, our emotional sort of landscape is like a garden. We can create more. We can plant more flowers that we want. We can create more emotions that we want more of. If I don't like right now what my heart radius is, guess what? I have the ability to change it. And that is what's so beautiful about that. But imagine, Krista, how the world would look so different if all of us took responsibility for our 8-foot radius. The world would look a lot different. And I'm committed to considering what my radius is.
Yeah, I think about, wow, because we know this. You walk into a room and you can feel tension before anyone says a word. When you walk, I mean, because people are communicating before they're actually saying anything.
Yes.
And so it's so real. It is so visceral. And I have come to the realization that when exactly what you said, when we take responsibility for how we show up to a space, it changes the game. And at any moment, even if we're frustrated, even if we're mad about something, whatever. Okay, so pause and choose. Pause, self-regulate, do my reset ritual, breathe, whatever I have to do.
Yes.
And then take responsibility for how you are showing up. Like I tell myself that. And that is a game changer for everybody. So, yeah, sure, the frustrating situation may still be there, but now I'm not out of alignment of who I
Mm.
want to be and my values. And that matters to me.
Mm. Yeah. It's a way to live the generosity model, Krista. It really is.
Mhm.
And that's what I've seen you do in your hard circumstances and the way that you live in aliveness is like, it's not actually even just about how you're showing up in the world now. And we talked about that on the first part of this interview. And it's really sticking with me that this idea that my purpose and my aliveness is not just for me, but even as you just were talking, I'm like, yeah, this is the generosity model. It's my willingness to do the work is actually going to create a gift for someone else.
Mhm.
And sometimes that actually inspires me more than even, the gift that it is to myself. So I love how you're describing that, like do the work and not just for you, but for somebody else who needs you to do the work.
Mhm. Well, I think of Jesus. I mean, let's just go back to Jesus. Like
Mm.
Jesus
Mhm.
was never not regulated. And I think about the sense of aliveness that Jesus brought into every space and the sense of hope and was able to carry the sorrow in a space, but also
Wow.
like raise them to hope, raise whoever it was. I mean, right now in my head, I'm thinking of the woman at the well. And it's so powerful when we can do that. How does a person know if they are becoming more alive?
Mm. Wow, what a beautiful question. How does a person know if they're becoming more alive? Wow, I absolutely love that question. I can only, I guess, I'm thinking about it more in terms of my experience with aliveness and honestly watching as a mom, watching my children, you see it in someone's eyes.
Mhm.
And why? I mean, our eyes are connection to our heart. But I think when we have a broad experience of emotions, we know we're more alive. When I can hold depth and sorrow to the same degree that I can hold passion and enthusiasm, I'm alive. When I am filled with the type of energy where I can say yes to whatever it is that's in front of me. I talk about this all the time with leaders, but our physical body is so important to manage because without our physical energy, I mean, we really can't do much. And so I know that I'm alive when I'm carrying enough energy to experience vitality because
Mm.
aliveness has its own energy frequency and it does require that we're feeding it with like our physiological biology. And so I know that I'm alive when I've created and sustained physical energy that holds the vitality because it is this, we're talking about a high energy state. And then I think we have to say, I know that I'm carrying aliveness when I am creating aliveness in others. It
Mm.
cannot just be one flow. I stop with myself. But if my life and my purpose and my emotional regulation and my heart radius are creating something good in someone else,
Mm.
then I am alive. And I think it's really beautiful if you're just like asking, even as you're listening, like, am I alive? Go look at the quality of your relationships and what you are producing by way of that relationship. And that might give you, it's hard. You have to be honest with yourself. But I think that's an indicator of how alive you
Mm.
are personally. What did I miss?
Mm.
What did I
You
miss?
know, I love all of that. And I also think when we're growing, we're alive. And so I think one of my
Yes.
key questions would be, where are we growing? How are we growing? Because if we've stopped growing, we will feel dead. We will. And I think this is like the John 10:10 life, right? We want to have life to the full. I mean, we know that the thief comes to kill and steal and destroy. We also, like, if we really think about it, we see that in our lives where the thief has come. to take us out, to just take us out of the knees. But God has for us this abundant life. And what does that mean? Well, it means we're rooted in Him. It means we are growing in Him. We are following His lead. We are allowing Him to give us new assignments for every season. Our purpose is bigger, but our assignments change. We're allowing those to happen. And we're continuing to be a tool in His hand. And that is aliveness. That is, and so do we know, like, like you said, do we take the time to really know what is going on? If we don't, I'll never forget the interview with Dr. Sasha Shilcutt. And she said her first boundary in life is those first 15 minutes of the day with herself, because if she doesn't know herself, how is she supposed to move through the world at all? And I love that. And so do we take that time, and do we take the time with God? And do we take the time to really know, like, what does make us come alive? I mean, that's one of the questions we ask our clients is, what brings you to life? Do you know what brings you life? If music brings you to life, how are you incorporating music? How are you taking a new lesson or doing something differently? Eric and I are doing dance lessons right now.
Amazing.
We are taking dance lessons. If you ask my husband how much he loves to dance, the answer is going to be on a scale of 1 to 10, 0. Like he likes dancing with me, but other than that, he does not like to dance. And yet there we are. Why? Because we want to keep growing as a couple. We want to keep leaning into this aliveness as a couple. So we got to do something differently. We got to grow differently in order to do that.
Yeah.
So when I think of aliveness, those are a few things that come to mind. Does that spur on anything else, Em?
I mean, I'm so glad you hit on that growth. You're right. It is an essential factor. And with growth comes a little bit of discomfort, which isn't that so interesting? Like, and we can maybe just throw this in here, like this idea of aliveness. You know, it's easy to think of the high side of aliveness, right? That like passion, enthusiasm, and love, and just like this. I mean, you can feel it. It's fun, but not always. If we're growing and we're changing, there's a little bit of discomfort to living in aliveness. I mean, and then maybe it goes back to what I said, where we kind of can hold those opposing feelings at the same time. But I think you hit the nail on the head, that back to the question you originally asked, like, how do you know if somebody's alive? If they're growing. What a beautiful answer. And we can measure that in our own lives, you know, where are we growing, where are we stagnant, and what's that really brave next step that might cause discomfort on the front end, but create aliveness on the back end. And we're committed to both of those things.
So good. So Em, as we close today, just kind of wrap it up with, how do purpose, emotional regulation, and aliveness reinforce each other?
Wow, what a beautiful, I just feel honored to be thinking about these really big, grand ideas that show up in the smallest ways in our lives. Purpose, we all have a purpose, macro and micro, and they are found in our assignments, big and small, everywhere. Our emotions are indicators. And if you're on this listening to like, I've been feeling this stirring that I want to get clear. Like, I know that I have purpose, but I want to clarify what it is so that I can really like measure it and run after it. Your emotional landscape is key to tuning into. Your emotions are indicators, not dictators. They'll show you what values matter most and where you might be offline and where you might create and find passion in something. So become a friend to your emotions. And that allows you the ability to live inside of your purpose more fully. And I would say aliveness is one of the greatest gifts in the whole world that God has given us. The ability to feel joy. Krista, back to your story, to walk through the hardest season of your life and still have the ability to feel love and joy and happiness and peace, and like bust into a hotel room with red lipstick on and be thrilled that you're alive. What a gift. And I am so passionate about this idea of aliveness. And I want anyone to listening to hear me say, if you feel like you are walking around a half shell of yourself, or you want more aliveness, you can create it. And it starts by slowing down, becoming your friend, And even just deciding what feeling you want more of and going after that thing. And that is going to be the roadmap to a little bit more aliveness. But really, in general, purpose creates aliveness. Our emotional well being creates aliveness. Connection creates aliveness. And ultimately, a life surrendered to Christ is where we come to know life and life to the full. Aliveness was God's idea. So if you want more, get to know Christ, and you will get to know what aliveness is really all about.
Emily, thank you. Thank you so much. As I said in the beginning, you encounter Emily and she changes your life. And that's just the way it is. And it's just been such a joy to get to share her and the whole team in this series with all of you. And you know what? Wide awake. That's our goal. Let's be wide awake together. As we journey through this life, God has plans that have been set in advance for us to do. And let's just do it with everything we've got. Let's turn up the volume.